You're listening to a Total Market Solutions podcast. Hemogenyx Pharmaceuticals plc is a preclinical stage biopharmaceutical group developing new medicines and treatments to treat blood and autoimmune disease. The company is traded in London and has subsidiaries in the US and Belgium. The chief executive and founder, Dr. Vladislav Sandler, joins me now. So, Dr. Sandler, bone marrow transplants have been demonstrated to successfully treat blood cancers and prolong life. However, it is a toxic procedure with cocktails of chemotherapeutic agents being administered to the patient. So how can your company assist in the process?
Right. First of all, thank you for inviting me for this interview. I'm indeed Vladislav Sandler, co-founder and CEO of Hemogenyx Pharmaceuticals. So originally the company was set up to address exactly the problem you mentioned. So bone marrow transplants are very serious and sometimes dangerous procedures that are given to people who are suffering from very difficult and dangerous blood diseases like leukemias, lymphomas, and severe autoimmune diseases. So one of the biggest problems with any bone marrow transplant is to condition the bone marrow transplant, meaning that to prepare the patient for the transplantation. So currently, as you mentioned, this is done by administering cocktail of chemotherapy combined with high or low dose of radiation. So this treatment is very non-specific, often toxic. Not everyone can even survive this initial treatment. So Hemogenyx Pharmaceuticals was set up to solve this problem, and we are solving this problem by developing a new type of bispecific antibody that redirects immune cells of the patient, T cells, to attack and eliminate unwanted cells. In our case, these unwanted cells, blood stem cells or early blood progenitors, and certain types of blood malignancies, so certain types of blood cancers. And our major target right now is acute myeloid leukemia.
Now, it's a big ambition, but I fully understand your commitment, particularly when I learned about the way that your father passed, and that inspired you to found the company.
Well, that was one of the reasons why I decided to translate my studies that I was doing for quite a while in the academia into a tangible product. But obviously, the ambition is much bigger than basically vengeance to a disease of my father. Obviously, it was important in the initial stage of the formation of the company.
Okay, so you are attracting attention from your peers, and there have been some notable partnerships founded during the time that your company has been in existence. And just one of them is Johnson & Johnson. You have a really good stable of partnerships.
Right. So our company is small but extremely powerful. So we formed a number of high-profile collaborations with companies like Johnson & Johnson, Johnson Pharmaceuticals, Eli Lilly with our mice, and with a number of other institutions. And all of these collaborations are driven by the data, are driven by the company achievements. And to me, and hopefully to everyone outside of the company, these collaborations basically are a validation of the quality of research, of the quality of work that Hemogenyx Pharmaceuticals is doing.
Validation, that is a very powerful word. Now, you've been developing treatments for blood cancers and autoimmune diseases for almost a decade, but you really came to UK investor attention last April when you announced that you were looking to discover antibodies that can fight COVID-19. So there are still not enough vaccinations to go around the world. So how is your research coming on? And what are these humanized mice?
Right. So before COVID-19 came to the attention of the world, we started working on the problem of emerging viral infections. And in fact, we started talking about it during the summer of 2019. We did not know about COVID-19. We did not know about this menace that basically came and pinned us down. The whole world is suffering. And in the US, for example, there are already almost 500,000 people dead. And also, hundreds of thousands of people in other countries, including the UK. So our idea was to try to develop a new method of very fast response to an emerging infection. And in the beginning, we thought about it as a method to respond to something like a bioweapon. So the reason why we thought that we could contribute in that direction was because we developed a new type of humanized mice that originally were developed for the company to test our own product candidates. However, when we looked at these mice that we developed for our own purposes, we discovered that these mice have additional properties that we did not anticipate to see in these mice. And so this discovery of these new properties of our humanized mice led to the attempt to develop new tools of rapid development of tools or treatments in response to emerging infections. And also these new properties of these mice led to the collaboration with Johnson & Johnson. And these new properties led to the entrance of the company into the area of autoimmune diseases. And we can talk about this as two separate projects. So when we developed these mice, we discovered that these mice recreate a universe of antibodies that existed in the donors of the blood that we used to create these mice. This meant that we could use these mice to isolate these antibodies and then use them for the treatment against a certain type of viral infection that the donor survived. So we took these mice, we started developing this approach, and then the COVID came. So we repurposed, so our original focus was not COVID actually. Our original focus was measles. And you would be surprised, you would think that measles is a solved problem. There are vaccines that are being administered since 1963. Yet there are hundreds of thousands of people, almost 200,000 people a year that die of measles today. So something had to be done, and we started working in that direction. And then COVID came, and we thought, well, we could try to use our technology to solve the problem with COVID patients. So take the blood of people who survived COVID, transplant it into our mice, and then amplify B cells that make antibodies against the virus that causes COVID, isolate these antibodies and recreate them for the treatment of people who are just being infected or are about to be infected. So unfortunately, we're a small company and we couldn't run as fast as, for example, our competitors like Eli Lilly or Regeneron. So they created this type of treatment without our mice using different methods, and they actually went through the FDA and got it approved. So because we are small, we have also not only a disadvantage of being small, but also an advantage of being able to change our direction extremely fast. And so instead of running after Lilly and Regeneron and other companies, we changed our direction, and instead of developing antibodies that everyone else is developing, we developed a new platform that we called CBR. And CBR platform is a completely new approach to treat viral infections that is a cell-based approach. We are not yet disclosing what that is, because we haven't filed yet intellectual property protection. We haven't filed patent applications yet. But all I can say at this point is that we have positive data. We know that in principle this approach works, and not only can it work to treat viral infections, it can also work, as we see right now, to treat certain types of cancer. So now we repurposed our mice and our desire to combat viral infections into a different area. So we are developing cell-based approach to combat viral infections and cancer.
Okay, well, before you get your patent protection, don't worry, because your secret is safe with us. But humanized mice, what do they look like? Do they have any human characteristics?
No, they look like normal immune-compromised mice that people use all over the world. The only difference is that these mice have human immune system. So their blood is partially human blood. So they have human T cells, they have human B cells, they have human plasma cells, they have human dendritic cells, and so on and so on. So these mice are somewhat unique because they develop pretty much adult human immune system, and they recreate the universe of human antibodies that exist in the donor of the blood that we use to create this mice.
That is fascinating, just as long as they don't start to demonstrate human emotions, otherwise you'll be dealing with an awful lot. But you keep saying that your company is small, but at the same time it's powerful. Now, I understand that part of the journey to becoming larger is funding. So to fund all these ambitions, you have a financing facility which you're currently drawing down on. Quite simply, who has provided the funds and at what cost to the company?
Right. So let's start from the fact that the company was founded and became operational actually in January 2015. Since then, the company developed a number of product candidates that we are talking about and people know about, using only about 7 million British pounds. That includes everything: the seed financing, the reverse takeover, the listing on the London Stock Exchange, and 2 fundraisers that happened in the last year, 2020, and also 2 convertible notes with Genesis. So totally we burned actually about less than 7 million pounds, and by the end of the last year, we had in our accounts still more than 1.5 million British pounds. So we're extremely frugal. We do not waste money on offices or suits, and we work really hard and trying to provide the highest ROI, return on investment, to our shareholders, which we were able to achieve last year. For example, we provided about 400% return. However, being small, as I mentioned before, is an advantage and disadvantage. And one of the disadvantages of being small is the lack of funds when the company tries to convert itself from a pure R&D enterprise into a clinical stage biopharmaceutical company. So to go into clinical trials and to actually conduct clinical trials, one needs a lot of money. And so we were looking for the source of this money, and we were lucky to find Mint Capital, who provided us with a convertible loan note facility, financing facility, up to 60 million British pounds over the next 3 years. So we were extremely lucky because Mint Capital agreed to put up as a first tranche 12 million British pounds. And this was extremely important for us because it gave us an opportunity to move 2 of our most important product candidates towards clinical trials. And in fact, we know for sure that these 12 million pounds will allow us not only to enter clinical trials with our CAR-T product candidate, but also to go through phase 1 clinical trials to achieve clinical proof of concept with CAR-T. In addition to that, this 12 million pounds will allow us to develop our second product candidate, which is the bispecific antibody, CDX bispecific antibody, through formal preclinical IND-enabling studies and file an IND and open an IND to get permission to try these antibodies in people. So this is absolutely invaluable, and it is so important for our company because it will give us an opportunity to disproportionately increase the value of our own value, basically. So the cost of this financing facility is relatively low compared to anything we were offered, and I can disclose that we had at least 6 or even 7 offers of financing of the company. We keep getting these offers, but we are sticking with mint capital at this point, and hopefully in the future, simply because their offer and the cost of this facility is drastically lower than anything we have encountered. For example, even a straight equity fundraise typically costs us in the range between 12, 13, and 25%. The cost of money that we get from mint capital is basically it's just 10% discount.
Okay, I understand. There's part of me thinking, though, that you must have had conversations about larger pharmaceuticals wanting to buy you, particularly with your Humanized Mice initiative. Or could it be that you are not prepared to let the company that you founded go yet?
No, we are not for sale.
You are not for sale. So therefore, shareholders who are maybe worried about you drawing down on this finance facility, they might be wondering, what is the exit strategy? When are they going to get their money back?
Well, the exit strategy at this point is for Hemogenyx Pharmaceuticals to go into clinical trials and achieve clinical proof of concept of our 2 major drug candidates. One is CAR-T, that's cell therapy for the treatment of acute myeloid leukemia and possibly conditioning of bone marrow transplants. And the second one is bispecific antibody that we developed for the treatment, again, of acute myeloid leukemia and conditioning of bone marrow transplants. So to understand why we are going this way, it's enough to look at our peers, basically. So a preclinical asset today, a preclinical product candidate is not worth that much. I mean, when I say it's not worth that much, means that it may be worth 20, 30 million US dollars. An asset, the same asset that went through clinical trials and got to the point of clinical proof of concept, increases its value dramatically. And I hate to give the numbers, but it may be 20, 30, 50 times higher than the original value. So unfortunately, it's not a linear development. There is an inflection point. And this inflection point is completion of the clinical proof of concept. That's why we were looking for an investor who would give us enough money from the outset of their investment scheme to achieve this inflection point.
But it sounds to me as though you've possibly considered selling the company at some stage, but it's all predicated on you getting to that clinical trial stage, and maybe then you might be up for sale.
Well, we are not a one-trick pony. We have more than one product candidate. And so if we achieve clinical proof of concept for let's say, 2 product candidates, we will be very expensive. And typically, well, I mean, it's hard to say what will happen. We are opportunistic, obviously. And if someone comes and offers us an obscene amount of money, then maybe we'll think about it. But most likely what will happen is we will partner with a big player for a product candidate and maybe with another big partner for another product candidate, allow them to help us to go through phase 3 and registration and start getting revenue. Then we'll talk about sale or something like that.
So much to look forward to. I tell you what, I can't wait for our next podcast together. So much to do, and therefore I shall allow you to continue on with your research. Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Vladislav Sandler, Chief Executive and founder of Hemogenyx Pharmaceuticals PLC. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.